Hello everybody and welcome to the second video in this React tutorial series for beginners. Now in this video, what I'm going to be doing is going through all of the folders and files that were created in the previous video when we kind of ran that script that pre-generated our React application for us. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The first folder that I want to look into is this public folder. Then we'll go into Src and then we'll talk about node modules and what files we can actually delete from here that we don't need. So the most important file inside of our public folder here is going to be our index.html. Now, this is kind of the base template for our website, if you want to think of it that way. This is the HTML document that will actually be rendered to start, and then React will kind of inject itself inside of this HTML document and control a certain part of it. So you can see we have some things here, like we have meta, we are referencing our favicon.ico. We are defining the viewport, we have a description, we have our Apple Touch icon, which is equal to the logo 192.png. We have the manifest we're referencing, the title, no script, and then we have this div. Now, this div is the most important part of this file right here, because this is actually where React is going to inject itself in. So you can kind of think that this file is generated, and then React will control this div. So if you had other stuff that wasn't inside of this div, React would not be able to control it, and it would appear on the website no matter what. So if I put like a p tag here, it doesn't matter what my React components are rendering, anything in this p tag will always be showing up on the website. Okay, so hopefully that's kind of clear, but that's the index.html file. Next, we're going to just look at this icon, this ICO. So if you want to change this icon, this is like the icon of the website. What you can do is just drag in a new icon. It has to be .ico and just name it the same thing and it will automatically update for you. Okay, and then we have logo 192 and logo 512. Obviously, you don't need these logos, but I'll just leave them in for right now because they're being referenced by our index.html file. If you were to delete these logos, then you would want to delete the links to them inside of this HTML file here. Now, notice that we're actually referencing anything inside of this public folder by using this %public URL %. So that's how you can reference anything inside of this folder. But for now, kind of assume you don't really need to touch anything in here. You don't need to move anything around, delete anything. It's totally fine the way it is. Next, we have this manifest.json. So actually, I lied. Inside of here, you can change the short name and the name of your application. So actually, let's go ahead and do that. Let's change this to be inventory like that, and then we could just make this inventory management system or something. So let me copy that and we'll put that here, inventory management. Okay, nice. So I can save that now, and then obviously the definition of all of your logos and your icons are here. Again, if you were to delete those, you would want to delete their respective entries inside of this icons list. Now, what the manifest actually does is kind of just give a description of your application. This is most useful for mobile applications, but there's a few things here like the default start URL, the display, the theme color, the background color. You're welcome to mess around with those, but not particularly important for what we're doing. Next, we have the robots.txt file. I won't really discuss this, but this is something that kind of handles or defines something related to when a bot comes on your website. You've probably seen these files before if you've worked on the web, but I won't really get into it. Okay, next we're going to go to Src. So Src is a much more important folder than public. Public, as I said, we don't really need to touch. And actually anything inside of this public folder is not going to be a part of our kind of compiled JavaScript when we actually run our application. So if you're unaware of what I mean by compiled JavaScript, we'll talk about that as we talk about the Src folder now. So this Src folder, this is where we're going to put all of our source code. Anything that's actually going to be bundled up by Webpack, which is a technology that's kind of working under the hood. I'll discuss really what that does in a second. And well, you want to put almost everything related to your application inside of this Src folder. There's very few exceptions for where you want to put something in the public folder rather than the Src folder, but any JavaScript files you have must go inside of here. That is an absolute must. And CSS and everything, you have to put inside of this Src folder. Now, oftentimes you'll see people that kind of put another folder in here. They'll maybe say like components like that, and then they'll put all of their just raw JavaScript files that are rendering or that have React components in them inside of the components folder. Now, you don't have to do that, but when your project gets larger, you'll see that people kind of separate their components into different directory structures, so that it's really easy to figure out where stuff is. And then they might have all their CSS in like a CSS folder and their logos and stuff in a different folder, but for now, we just have all of our files here. All right, so the most important file here is going to be index.js followed by app.js. So let's go into index.js first. index.js. Okay, so you can see here we're importing a bunch of stuff. We're importing React, React DOM. We have index.css. This is a style sheet that's going to be used for our application. And then we have app from app. And then what we're doing is we're saying React DOM.render. And in strict mode, we are rendering our main app component. Now, all of this stuff in React, kind of the functions or classes that we're going to create, are typically what are known as components. Now, we'll get into components in the next video, but just understand that when I say component, I'm kind of referencing something that looks like this, something that's like app, like this is a component. Okay, and then what we're doing is we're rendering this here inside of the document.getElementById root. So we're finding the root div in our index.html file, and then we're kind of injecting, so this div right here, we are injecting this app inside of that div. And so, as I said, we have control over this entire div. We can render stuff inside of the div because the app component is going to be inside of there. And then what this React.strict mode means is we're just going to have some more verbose output, in our console. So we'll get some better warnings and error messages than we typically would get. That's kind of what React strict mode does. If you didn't use React strict mode, like you could remove it and just go like this, and this would work fine as well. You don't need React strict mode. Okay, so that is index.js. Now we have this report web vitals thing. I'm actually going to delete this. I don't really want to talk about this, and we don't need this at all. So just delete that import, and then where it says report web vitals, you can just delete that file inside of Src. Okay, so that is index.js. This is kind of the entry point for our React application. It takes our main component and it renders it inside of the HTML document. Okay, so now we can go to app.js. So this is what I showed you in the last video. We just changed this to say my website is running. This is the main component for our application. This is the first thing that's rendered inside of that div. And this component here is what will render other components as well. So you can think of this as kind of the main React app, as it says app. And then from here, this will render all of the other stuff that will appear on the screen. So as we saw, we have this div named app, we have a header, we have an image, we have a p tag, we have a link. And actually what I'm going to do here is just delete all of this. I'm just going to put a p tag and just say, maybe we'll go like bare bones app. Get rid of all that random stuff that we don't need. Also means we can remove the import from logo.svg, and we can delete logo.svg because we don't need that anymore. All right. So again, this is our main application, and what this returns is HTML, actually what's known as JSX, that's going to be rendered inside of that div. And anyways, you might notice here, this says class name rather than class. This is a small change in React when you're using what's known as JSX, which is this syntax here. I know it looks just like regular HTML, but you actually can write kind of native JavaScript right inside of this HTML. We're going to see that in the next video. Regardless, one of the main changes whenever you have a class, rather than just saying class, you say class and then capital N, name, and then equal to whatever it is. Okay, so then we are going to look at the style sheets. So we have app.css. You can see that was being imported right here. These are obviously all of the styles related to that app component. We have like an animation and a few other things. I'm actually going to delete all of this because now that we don't have these divs, we're going to run into some issues. So let's get rid of all of that. Let's close that, and then we can go back to index.js. We see this is importing index.css. If we go to index.css, we can see we have more styles. These are global styles for our entire application. Awesome, so I'm going to delete that. Next thing we'll look at is this app.test.js and then setup.test.js. So app.test.js, what this is doing is just allowing you to run automated tests for your application. So if you're working in like a real code base and you're actually working on a big project, a lot of times you want to write some automated tests that will go through and do some testing of your user interface. And so you could actually run this test, and this would then tell you if the test ran successfully, right? So I'm not going to get into testing. We're not doing that in this video. You can delete this file if you want, but we'll just leave it in for now. So we will continue in 1 second, but I need to quickly thank the sponsor of this video and this series, which is Algo Expert. Algo Expert is the best platform to use when preparing for your software engineering coding interviews. They have over 155 coding interview questions on the platform. They have a data structures crash course, mock interviews, and a ton of other awesome features. Check them out from the link in the description and use the code TechWithTim for a discount on the platform. Next, I'm going to go to setup.test.js. Now, this kind of does what it says. It just sets up the testing environment for us by importing this library. That's about it. Not much more to that file. Okay, so that kind of covers the Src folder. And as I was saying, everything inside of this Src folder is kind of the source code for our application. Any JavaScript needs to go inside of here. Any CSS, you're probably going to want to put inside of here. And all of this stuff is going to be kind of bundled and packaged up and compiled by a tool that we have called Webpack. All right, so now let's talk about package.json. So package.json kind of defines all of the dependencies for our application. So you can see it says dependencies and then all of the things that we need to actually make this work. So if you were to install another dependency, we'll do that later in the series, you'll see it's automatically added to package.json. Now it also defines a few scripts. You can see that this is actually the script we use to start our web server. It's calling something called React scripts and then start. We then have our build, our test, and our eject script, which we won't end up using here, but those are other scripts that you could use. And you could actually define your own script inside of here. For example, you could say something like run API. Maybe you had an API attached to this project, and then maybe that API is a Python project, and you say Python3 run underscore API.py or something. But that's totally valid. You can define your own scripts that do really whatever you want. We have a few other things in here, some stuff related to our linters and development, and that's about it. We don't really need to talk about much more. Awesome. Next, we have this readme.md file. You can feel free to read this if you want. It's just some information about this kind of default React application. Then we have this yarn.lock file. I won't really talk about this too much, just some more stuff related to dependencies. And then we have gitignore. So when you actually create this React application using that create React app script, it will automatically initialize an empty Git repository, and then it gives you a gitignore file. And the reason it gives you this gitignore is because you don't want this node modules folder and a bunch of other kind of temporary files to be a part of your GitHub repository, because they're usually really massive and there's no need to be transferring this level of files because we have this package.json file. So now let me discuss this node modules and then kind of clarify a few things that I skimmed over. So node modules, this is where all of the dependencies for your project is. This is by far the largest folder. If you actually look at how large this is probably in the hundreds of megabytes. There's tons of different stuff inside of here. And the reason there's so much is because, yeah, your project may only have 5 or 6 dependencies, but those dependencies may have, hundreds of things that they depend on. And so all of your dependencies and sub-dependencies are inside of this folder. And so if you don't have this folder, well, your project is not going to work. Now, the thing is, though, this package.json file defines all of the dependencies that are inside of this folder, all of the main dependencies. And so if you actually delete this folder, you're able to kind of reinstall it or re-add it to the project by simply reading this package.json file, running a very simple command that actually will install all of these dependencies for you. So I'm going to show you that. Let's delete this file here. It's going to take a second to delete. Once it's done, I will be right back. All right, so I've deleted the node modules folder. You can see it's gone here. Now let me just show you, if I try to start my application, I say yarn and then start, we should see that we get an error. It says command failed with error code 1. React scripts not recognized as an internal or external command. And the reason it's not recognized is because, well, that was a dependency for our project and we no longer have it. And so to reinstall all these dependencies, what you need to do is type npm I or npm install. It's the same thing. And what this will do is install all of the dependencies for you based on your package.json file. So it will read the package.json, look at all the dependencies here, and then automatically install it. So if I run npm install, you're going to see it will start creating the node modules folder. And then it also will create a new folder, new file. This is going to be called packagelock.json. You'll see that created in a minute. You don't really have to worry about this file. This is kind of just defining what this npm command actually did. So if you see package.lock.json, don't worry about it. You can leave it, you can delete it, doesn't matter. It's not something that we really need to talk about. Okay, so that is package.json, and that is what the node modules folder does. And with that, that kind of wraps up all of the different files inside of here. Now, the last thing I'm going to discuss is kind of the technologies running behind the hood here. So we have something called Babel and we have something called Webpack, which are doing a lot of kind of the heavy lifting for us so that all of this stuff works and is very efficient and we don't have to worry about it. So you've probably heard of something called Webpack before, but maybe not. Essentially, what happens when you run this React scripts, if we look here, React scripts start is it's using a Webpack. And what Webpack will do is it will take all of your source code and it will bundle it together into one large JavaScript file. The reason it does this is to make everything as efficient as possible. It's kind of running a JavaScript compiler. So taking all of your source code and compiling it down into stuff that, well, the browser can understand. And that's going to be the most efficient to serve and to run. That's really the best description I can give without getting into too much detail. That's kind of what Webpack is doing, and that's happening on the back end. We don't really have to worry about how that happens, but that is happening. Now, there's another thing that we're using here called Babel. In fact, if you go into package.json, you're going to see Babel all over the place. And the reason for that is what Babel will do is it will take your high-level JavaScript code. And when I say high level, I'm talking about, your like ES6, ES7 JavaScript code. And it will actually convert all of that code into ES5 JavaScript code, or like older versions of JavaScript codes that it will work on pretty much any browser. Because if you try to use really new, like state-of-the-art JavaScript stuff, older browsers don't support that, and so you're going to have problems. And so what Babel does is it kind of makes sure that your application is going to be compatible with any browser that is being used. Okay, and with that, that's going to conclude this video. I'm sure this is still probably a little bit confusing for you guys. This will start to clear up as we actually start working with these files, but hopefully this just gave you an idea of what all of these different things are, kind of how they link together, and a little bit about how they work. And maybe now this doesn't just look like a bunch of gibberish, and you can kind of understand why we have all of these different files and folders. Awesome. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next React tutorial.